Well, thank you for having me. I am so excited to be here today talking to you about my favorite thing in the world, which is telling stories about disability inclusion. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to be here telling you why we need to include people with disabilities in the church, because I think we all know why. What these stories are going to show you is why everyone else in the church needs to be included in the disability ministry mission. Because when we do, things are more beautiful than you can imagine. So, the first story I'm going to talk to you about today is about my friend Alex. She is a young lady who's on the autism spectrum, and I have known Alex for most of her life, and I have been her buddy at church many times. And that includes at special events like Christmas Eve services. Now, you all know Christmas Eve services. It's where every child in the church wears their shiniest, scratchiest outfit, and they all cram together on the risers all at once to sing some endearingly off-key Christmas carols, right? It's adorable, right? Well, at our church, in addition to the adorable kids on the stage, we also have a few adorable adult buddies cramming up on the stage. And for many Christmases, I have been one of Alex's buddies. And that has always gone great. And then last year, something unexpected happened. When the kids' set was over, all of those shiny, scratchy kids went off the stage all in one big giant herd at the same time, and I became separated from Alex. Now, I could see her looking for me, and I was trying to get to her because I knew with the extra lights and noise and crowd and her not being in her routine, this was a recipe for something to happen. And then something did happen. But let's put a pin in that story first, because before I can tell you the rest of that story, I have another story that I need to share with you. So for those of you who, like me, are in ministry, you know that sometimes this job can feel hard. And sometimes you can even feel like, dare I say it, tired out and uninspired. So this was me a few months ago when I decided to have the bright idea to fix my motivation problem by praying to God one of the most dangerous prayers in the world. Sounds like a good idea, right? So I prayed, Lord, break my heart for what breaks yours. Now, I say that this prayer is dangerous because I have found that God really likes to answer it. And he likes to answer it promptly and unequivocally. And so I prayed that, and then I forgot about it. A few weeks went by, and I had an experience that I was not expecting. Having spent my entire life up to this point in churches that prioritize disability inclusion, I had very little experience working with churches or talking to churches who had never really thought about it before. And so I will skip over the details of exactly what happened next, but understand that I talked to a church that had not really thought about it before, and this led to a very meaningful conversation about why disability inclusion is so important. And during this talk, I was pouring my heart out, and I said, the truth is, I have a lot of people in my life impacted by autism, and there's a lot of people that I care about who have disabilities, and I would want to go to a church where they can come too. And the very kind and very patient person that I was talking to at this church said in all sincerity, I hope you can find that. You will probably need to find a church that specializes in it. And that is when I knew my dangerous prayer had been answered, because my heart broke and shattered all over the floor. And I realized that there were so many churches out there who didn't have the beauty of disability inclusion like I had always grown up with. And I realized they didn't even know that they were missing it. And I also realized that there are a lot of churches out there who do have disability ministry, but it's only for a few people in a niche ministry inside their church. And when we do this, when we don't let everyone in the church into part of the mission, and we have it only for a few churches, a few volunteers within that church, and we don't see instead that the mission of disability ministry is for everyone, we miss out on all the beautiful stories that God wants us to tell. Stories like these. So if you see these felt characters and popsicle puppets up here, not only do they have a story, but they are part of a story themselves. These characters give students who have learning differences a chance to feel the Bible story as they hear it. That is called multisensory teaching. Now this church right here has hundreds of those characters inside their sensory resource room. None of those characters were bought at the store. Instead, the small groups of the church were invited in to make them by hand. Why? It wasn't because the church didn't have a budget for a felt board. It was because when you invite the church in to make these adapted curriculum, you invite them in to understand disability inclusion better, and you invite them into your mission. And what's even better is when you see in the corner there, it's one of our students learning the Bible story in a way that connects with her. The reason our students are learning those stories is because the people of the church actively made that happen. And that is beautiful. Now, the story behind this next slide is my young man friend there. He's in the 5th grade. And this little boy, he has the gift of compassion like few people I've ever met. And he has the gift of persistence. And he asked over and over and over and over again, can he please be part of his disability ministry serving team, which technically he was too young to do. But because disability ministry is for everyone in the church, he became this church's first peer buddy. So now on Sundays, he's not only learning about the love of Christ, he is living it out in the classroom. That is beautiful. Okay, these pictures are from a marriage conference for parents of children with disabilities that my church hosted many years ago. Now, those of you who are in families impacted by disability, then you know that typical church marriage conferences don't really talk about the things that your family is struggling with. And you know how very, very important this is. Well, we hosted this, and people from all over the community came, believers and non-believers. And they finally had a place where they could learn and share. And there were people, including men, who openly wept because they finally had a safe place where they could do it. At the end of that conference, we treated them to a special dinner and tried our best to pamper them. And that's beautiful. But it was never what was the most beautiful part of the conference for me. What that was how we were able to host it. It wasn't because we had a big budget to hire a fancy catering company, or we had a special partnership with professional organizations, because believe me, we didn't. No, it was because the people of our church came together and made that happen. We had people, most of whom will never be impacted by disability themselves, make cupcakes, prepare the food, donate gift bags, donate roses. We had a decorating committee. And on a Saturday night, we had people give up their weekend to dress up as waiters and waitresses and serve our guests. Every person in that church that came together to host this event came together, was now part of the disability ministry mission. And that is beautiful. Now, this next slide is a story about a dimly lit stage. And I know you're thinking, that sounds exciting. Well, you're right. It is exciting because it represents a memory that I will always hold tucked into my heart. Years ago, I used to be on my church's staff, and we used to have meetings after special events where we would go over what went well and what was challenging. And we were having a meeting about a special event where kids were invited onto the stage to sing. And yes, again, it was another Christmas Eve service. Well, while we were in that meeting, our pastor asked our worship director, why was the stage light so low when parents were trying to take pictures of their kids? And our worship director said, because 2 of our students who are on the autism spectrum were going to go on the stage and sing with their peers for the very first time, and we wanted to make sure they did not feel overwhelmed by bright lighting. And then our pastor said, oh, okay. And then we moved on. We did not have to have a lengthy conversation about why that was needed or what else we could do, because every person around that table, no matter what ministry they led, was part of the disability ministry mission. And we all knew it was more important to create an atmosphere where everyone can participate than to create an environment that looks good on Instagram. Who here thinks that's beautiful? Now, speaking of Christmas Eve service, this brings me back to the story that started this whole talk. Last Christmas Eve, when something did happen to my friend Alex. When we left off in the story, I had just lost her hand as she tried to get back from the main stage to her classroom down the hall. As I tried to catch up to her, I saw someone else moving towards her. It was another one of our students in our disability ministry. Now, this young man has a developmental disability, and he also has the gift of compassion and the gift of leadership. And it was not too long before this Christmas Eve service that we invited him into our mission too, encouraging him to use his gifts to help his peers. And as I watched from the crowd, I saw him reach out his hand to grab Alex's. And I would love to tell you what happened next, but I'd like you to hear it from his parents.
Hi, we are Kevin and Jamie Miles, the proud parents of a 13-year-old son. We've been fortunate enough the last approximately 10 years for him to be part of the special needs ministry at our church.
And why it is so important to have a special needs ministry within the church is its own testament and faith for us. This past December, during our Christmas Eve service, we watched the simplest act of kindness play out as our son recognized one of his peers had gotten separated from her adult buddy. And in the mere moment, he extended a hand and led her through the crowd to her awaiting buddy. And this is significant, you see, because for so many years, I have prayed on my knees for God to show me a space for Caleb in this world. And the reality is, his space is right in front of my eyes. This is our testament as to why a special needs ministry is so important to the church. We are so proud of the spiritual journey that our son is on and thankful for all that has been poured into him.
Thank you for the opportunity to allow us to share our story. God bless.
So what his parents shared was, when Caleb saw his friend feeling alone, he came up and grabbed her hand, and then they walked hand in hand back to the classroom. And Alex didn't need me at all because I wasn't the only person in that church who cared. And that is beautiful, but is not what is most beautiful about this story. That comes from what his mother just shared, which is there were so many times when she had been down on her knees praying to God about her son, her beautiful, beautiful boy who navigates the world every day with a disability. And she prayed, God, show me where there's space for him in this world. Is there anyone out here who can relate to that mother's prayer? That is a bold and dangerous prayer. And God answered it unequivocally. He said, he belongs right here, right in front of you, right in a church who has made space for him to feel loved and encouraged and empowered to use his gifts to be part of the mission too. And this is what I wanted to say that day that my heart broke and shattered on the floor. Don't miss it. Churches, don't miss it by waiting for other churches to specialize in disability ministry. People, don't miss it by waiting for other people more qualified than you to serve in disability ministry. Leaders, don't miss the opportunity to invite everyone in the whole church into the mission that God gave all of us, which is to go and make disciples of all people. When we change the attitude from disability ministry being a specialized ministry to one where it is an everyone ministry, we change everything. And that is beautiful. Now, in true Wonderful Works fashion, there is one more thing before you go. I have one more story I want to share, and this one is from the Bible. This one is about a man who had a disability. In fact, he was lame from birth, and every day he would go to the temple gate to beg. Now, one day, two men came by, and the lame man asked them for money. But the men did not give him money. Instead, one said, "Silver and gold I do not have, but what I do have, I give to you." Okay, we're going to unpack that for a minute. These two men who were walking by were invited into an opportunity to help someone with a disability. They were not doctors, occupational therapists, special education teachers, or part of a specialized ministry. But they were part of the church, and their names were John and Peter. And they could have said, "Sorry, this is not our specialty. Let me see if I can find someone else to help you." But that's not what Peter said. He said, "What I have, I will give it to you." Just like when he was invited into the mission of helping people with disabilities, then he had the chance to use the very gift that God gave him, which was his great faith, to make things better. And in his case, he used his great faith and healed the man in Jesus' name. But what I find so interesting about this story is that if John and Peter had never been offered this opportunity to serve, then we would have missed out on this story that strengthens the church through their powerful testimony. Just like when we, the church, fail to give opportunities to everyone in our church to be part of our disability ministry mission, then we take away their opportunity to strengthen God's kingdom through their own powerful testimonies, which is why this story is so important. And there's one more thing to this story. That temple gate, where two men from the church were invited to serve a man with a disability, the name of that gate, it was beautiful. Thank you for listening today. If your church would like more information on how to start, strengthen a disability ministry, or how to invite your whole congregation into the mission, please visit us at wonderfulworks.net. Thank you.